July 31, 2024. 2:17 a.m. The guest quarters of the Mossad compound in northern Tehran lay silent beneath a moonless Persian sky. The air hung thick with the scent of jasmine from the gardens below, mingling with the distant hum of early morning traffic filtering through the Alborz mountains. In room 412, Ismail Haniyeh, the political leader of Hamas, slept peacefully after attending the inauguration ceremony of Iran's new president, Mossad Pezeshkian. The walls around him, reinforced concrete layered behind decorative Persian tilework, were designed to protect visiting dignitaries from the world outside. They were designed to keep threats at bay. But the threat, in this case, had been waiting inside those walls for nearly 2 months, invisible, patient, and meticulously calibrated. At precisely 2:17 a.m., a signal, transmitted from somewhere beyond Iran's borders, activated a device no larger than a prayer book. The explosion that followed lasted less than 3 seconds. The shockwave shattered windows across 2 floors, sending fragments of glass and plaster cascading into the courtyard fountain below. When Iranian security forces breached the smoke-filled room 7 minutes later, they found Haniyeh's body on what remained of the bed, a single penetrating wound through his torso. His bodyguard, stationed in an adjacent room, was unharmed. The walls showed scorch marks concentrated in a radius no wider than 6 feet. This was not a rocket strike. This was not a drone. This was something else entirely, something that would force the world to reconsider the boundaries of covert warfare. The killing of Ismail Haniyeh was not an isolated act of vengeance. It was the culmination of decades of operational evolution, born from the ashes of Munich, refined in the back alleys of Beirut, and perfected in the digital shadows of the 21st century. To understand what happened in that Tehran guest house requires understanding the doctrine that made it possible. A philosophy of targeted elimination that Israel's Mossad has elevated to an art form, blending human intelligence, technological innovation, and psychological warfare into operations that leave no fingerprints but maximum impact. This was not the first time Mossad had reached into the heart of Iran to strike its enemies, and it would not be the last. But the precision, the audacity, and the implications of the Haniyeh assassination marked a threshold, a moment when the hunter demonstrated it could reach anyone, anywhere, regardless of walls, guards, or sovereign borders. The origins of this capability trace back to September 5, 1972, when Palestinian terrorists from Black September stormed the Olympic Village in Munich, taking 11 Israeli athletes hostage. The crisis ended in bloodshed, all 11 Israelis dead, along with 5 terrorists and 1 West German police officer. For Israel, Munich was not merely a tragedy, it was a revelation of vulnerability. Prime Minister Golda Meir convened her security cabinet within hours of the massacre's end. The decision they reached was as cold as it was resolute. Those responsible would be hunted down, one by one, wherever they hid. Operation Wrath of God was born. Over the next 2 decades, Mossad agents tracked and eliminated the architects of Munich across Europe and the Middle East. Bomb under a telephone in Paris, poisoned toothpaste in Cyprus, gunfire in Rome. The operations were brutal, sometimes imprecise, but they established a principle that would define Israeli counterterrorism. Perpetrators would face consequences, regardless of distance or time. That principle evolved, the methods refined. By the time Haniyeh became a target, Mossad's operational playbook had transformed from reactive vengeance to proactive decapitation. Surgical strikes designed not just to punish, but to dismantle networks before they could act. Ismail Haniyeh was born in the al-Shadi refugee camp in Gaza in 1962, the son of parents displaced during the 1948 Arab-Israeli War. He grew up in poverty, surrounded by the symbols of Palestinian dispossession, concrete shelters, UN ration cards, and the ever-present memory of lost villages. Like many young men in Gaza, he found purpose in resistance. He joined Hamas shortly after its founding in 1987, rising through the ranks as a pragmatic operator who understood both the mechanics of militant operations and the politics of public relations. By 2006, when Hamas won the Palestinian legislative elections, Haniyeh had become Prime Minister of the Palestinian Authority. His tenure was short-lived. By 2007, Hamas had violently seized control of Gaza, expelling Fatah forces and consolidating power. Haniyeh became the face of Hamas to the world, a figure who wore suits in diplomatic meetings and spoke of Palestinian statehood, while simultaneously overseeing a military wing that launched thousands of rockets into Israeli towns. In 2017, facing increasing Israeli pressure, he left Gaza for exile in Qatar, where he lived in comfort while directing Hamas operations from a distance. To Israel, Haniyeh was not merely a political leader. He was the head of an organization responsible for decades of suicide bombings, rocket barrages, and cross-border raids. He was the man who praised the October 7, 2023 massacre, the surprise Hamas assault that killed over 200 Israelis, mostly civilians, in a single day of coordinated terror. He was, in Israeli eyes, a legitimate target under the laws of war. But eliminating him posed challenges unlike almost any other. He lived in Doha, under Qatari protection, in a city where Israeli operatives could not move freely. He traveled sparingly, always with security, always unpredictable, except when he went to Iran. Iran had been Hamas's most important benefactor for decades, providing funding, weapons, and training to sustain the group's military capabilities. When Masoud Pezeshkian was elected president of Iran in July 2024, Haniyeh received a formal invitation to attend the August inauguration. It was a gesture of alliance, a public display of solidarity between Tehran and Hamas. For Haniyeh, it was an opportunity to reinforce ties with Iran's new leadership. For Mossad, it was an opening. Intelligence agencies operate on patterns. They track movements, monitor communications, and wait for deviations, moments when targets step outside their protective bubbles. Haniyeh's decision to attend the inauguration represented precisely such a moment. He would be on Iranian soil, in a facility controlled by Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, surrounded by security. But he would also be stationary, predictable, and inside a building that Mossad had evidently studied in exhaustive detail. The operation that followed required months of preparation, penetration of Iranian security, and the pre-positioning of a weapon unlike any publicly known system. According to multiple intelligence sources cited in the New York Times, The Telegraph, and Israeli defense publications, the device that killed Haniyeh was not delivered the night of his death. It was planted approximately 2 months earlier, sometime in late May or early June 2024, inside the very room Haniyeh would later occupy. The Neshat compound, a heavily guarded facility managed by the IRGC, hosted foreign dignitaries and officials regularly. Mossad's operatives, identities unknown, methods classified, somehow gained access during this window. They concealed an explosive device weighing less than 5 kilograms within the room's infrastructure, possibly inside furniture, a wall fixture, or even the bed frame itself. The device was equipped with a remote detonation mechanism, likely triggered via satellite or encrypted signal to avoid detection by Iranian counter-surveillance systems. The explosive charge was carefully calibrated, powerful enough to kill a human target within close proximity, but contained enough to minimize collateral damage. This was not indiscriminate violence, it was precision assassination, engineered to function as a scalpel rather than a hammer. The night Haniyeh arrived at the compound, he had no reason to suspect danger. He had attended the inauguration earlier that day, sitting among foreign dignitaries as Pezeshkian took the oath of office. Photographs from the ceremony show Haniyeh smiling, shaking hands with Iranian officials, secure in the belief that Tehran's security apparatus could protect him. Iranian intelligence had swept the room. Iranian guards patrolled the corridors. Iranian air defenses monitored the skies. But none of these measures could detect a weapon that had been waiting, silent and inert, for weeks. At some point after Haniyeh retired for the night, Mossad operators monitoring his location confirmed he was in the room. They verified the signal path. They authorized the strike. A command was sent, the device detonated. The Iranian government's initial response was confusion, then fury. State media reported the death as an assassination, but did not immediately specify the method. Early statements blamed a guided missile or airborne projectile, consistent with Iran's desire to project an image of external aggression rather than internal penetration. But the physical evidence contradicted this narrative. There was no missile debris, no rooftop impact crater, no fragmentation pattern consistent with an airstrike. The explosion had originated inside the room. Within 48 hours, Iranian officials quietly revised their story. Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei issued a statement vowing harsh punishment for Israel, confirming that Tehran held Mossad responsible. But the embarrassment was profound. A senior Hamas leader, under Iranian protection, had been killed inside an IRGC facility without a single Israeli soldier, drone, or missile crossing Iranian airspace. The operation exposed vulnerabilities Iran had never publicly acknowledged. Mossad's ability to infiltrate the most secure facilities in the Islamic Republic, to pre-position weapons and to execute remote strikes with surgical precision. It was a humiliation that reverberated through Iran's security establishment. For Mossad, the operation represented the logical endpoint of a trajectory that began decades earlier. Modern Israeli targeted killings began in earnest during the Second Intifada, the Palestinian uprising that erupted in 2000 and claimed over 1,000 Israeli lives. Faced with suicide bombings in cafes, buses, and shopping centers, Israel adopted a policy of preventive strikes, killing terrorist operatives before they could launch attacks. These operations initially relied on airstrikes, F-16 jets dropping precision-guided bombs on vehicles in Gaza, missiles obliterating bomb makers in their workshops. The methods were effective but blunt, often causing civilian casualties that generated international condemnation. So Mossad innovated. In 2010, Hamas commander Mahmoud al-Mabhouh was assassinated in a Dubai hotel room by a team of Mossad operatives who entered the country on forged passports, disabled security cameras, and killed their target using methods that left no obvious trace. In 2020, Iranian nuclear scientist Mohsen Fakhrizadeh was killed on a highway outside Tehran by a remote-controlled machine gun mounted in a nearby vehicle, an operation so precise that Fakhrizadeh's wife, sitting beside him, was unharmed. These operations shared a common signature: minimal collateral damage, maximum psychological impact, and methods designed to avoid direct Israeli attribution while leaving no doubt who was responsible. The Haniyeh assassination refined this formula. Unlike the Fakhrizadeh killing, which required positioning a weapon system near a known travel route, the Tehran operation required penetrating a secure facility, hiding a device for weeks, and ensuring it remained undetected through multiple security sweeps. This implied either extraordinary human intelligence, agents or informants inside Iran's security apparatus, or cutting-edge concealment technology, or both. Analysts speculated about the device's composition. Some suggested it was a shaped charge designed to focus the blast wave in a specific direction, minimizing damage to surrounding structures while maximizing lethality within a confined area. Others posited advanced materials that evaded standard explosive detection equipment. Still others noted the operation's timing, executed during a moment of political transition in Iran, when security protocols may have been momentarily relaxed. Regardless of specifics, the operation demonstrated capabilities that few intelligence agencies in the world possess. The psychological dimension of the assassination was as important as the technical execution. Mossad's operations are designed not merely to eliminate individuals, but to send messages to adversaries, to allies, and to potential recruits within enemy ranks. The message to Hamas was unambiguous. Leadership is no longer safe, even in friendly capitals, even inside guarded compounds. The message to Iran was equally stark. Your sovereignty means nothing if you harbor Israeli targets. The message to potential informants within hostile organizations was subtler, but no less significant. Cooperation with Israel might be the only insurance policy that matters. These operations create paranoia. They sow distrust. After Haniyeh's death, Hamas officials reportedly began avoiding electronic devices, varying their routines, and questioning their own security personnel. Some reportedly refused to sleep in designated safe houses. The fear of penetration, of not knowing which room, which phone, which ally might be compromised, became a weapon in itself. But the operation also carried risks. International law governing targeted killings remains contested terrain. Israel argues that individuals like Haniyeh, who direct military operations against Israeli civilians, are combatants subject to legitimate targeting under the laws of armed conflict. Critics counter that assassinations conducted on the territory of third-party nations violate sovereignty and amount to extrajudicial killings. The fact that Haniyeh was killed in Iran during a diplomatic visit intensified these legal and ethical debates. Iran denounced the operation as an act of war. Qatar, where Haniyeh had lived, condemned it as a violation of norms. Turkey, which had hosted Hamas delegations, called for international accountability. Yet Israel remained silent, neither confirming nor denying responsibility, a posture that allows for operational ambiguity while maintaining strategic deterrence. The technology behind the Haniyeh killing also raises uncomfortable questions about the future of warfare. If remote-controlled explosive devices can be pre-positioned months in advance and detonated via satellite signal, the distinction between battlefield and civilian space collapses. Hotels become potential kill zones. Embassies become vulnerable. The infrastructure of daily life, furniture, appliances, construction materials, becomes a potential vector for covert weapons. This is not science fiction. It is the operational reality Israel has created, and it is a reality that other nations are studying closely. If Mossad can plant a bomb in Tehran, what prevents other intelligence agencies from doing the same in Tel Aviv, Washington, or Beijing? The proliferation of precision assassination capabilities may represent a new arms race, one measured not in missiles or tanks, but in the ability to reach inside an enemy's most secure spaces and deliver death without warning. Yet for all the sophistication of the technology, the Haniyeh operation ultimately succeeded because of a more fundamental element: human intelligence. Someone inside Iran's security apparatus or within the contractor network servicing the Neshat compound provided access. Someone identified which room Haniyeh would occupy. Someone ensured the device remained undetected. Mossad's greatest asset has never been its gadgets. It has been its ability to recruit sources in hostile territory, individuals motivated by money, ideology, revenge, or fear, who are willing to betray their own systems. These sources are the invisible foundation of every operation. They are the door openers, the information providers, the silent enablers who make surgical strikes possible, and they are cultivated over years, sometimes decades, through patient intelligence work that rarely makes headlines. The Haniyeh operation likely relied on a network of such sources, each providing a small piece of the puzzle, none fully aware of the operation's scope, until the explosion echoed through Tehran's pre-dawn silence. In the weeks following the assassination, the symbolic object that came to define the operation was not a weapon, but a key, metaphorical and literal. The key to the compound, the key to the room, the key to the device's activation. In intelligence circles, the term key is used to describe critical access points: the informant who opens a door, the signal that unlocks a device, the vulnerability that allows penetration. Mossad's mastery lies in its relentless pursuit of keys, the small mechanisms that unlock larger possibilities. The Haniyeh operation was the culmination of countless small keys turned in succession. The recruitment of an Iranian source years earlier, the mapping of the Neshat compound's layout, the development of an undetectable explosive device, the monitoring of Haniyeh's travel patterns, the patience to wait for the perfect moment. Each key turned silently, invisibly, until the final key, the detonation signal, completed the sequence. This metaphor of keys recurs throughout Mossad's operational history. The key to al-Mabhouh's hotel room in Dubai, the key to Fakhrizadeh's travel route, the key to Iran's nuclear archive stolen in 2018. These are not brute force operations. They are exercises in precision, patience, and the exploitation of overlooked vulnerabilities. The transformation wrought by the Haniyeh assassination extended beyond Hamas and Iran. It recalibrated the calculus of leadership for militant organizations worldwide. Prior to July 31, 2024, Hamas leaders could reasonably believe that distance, diplomatic immunity, and friendly governments offered some protection. That illusion shattered in room 412. The operation demonstrated that Israel considers no location off-limits and no protection sufficient. When it comes to individuals, it designates as threats. This doctrine of boundless reach creates deterrence, but it also eliminates escape routes. There is no retirement for Hamas commanders, no quiet exile that ensures safety. The only options are operational security so perfect it becomes suffocating, or capitulation. This psychological transformation matters because it influences recruitment and morale. Younger operatives within Hamas, watching their leaders killed in escalating displays of technological prowess, must confront the reality that advancement within the organization may be a death sentence. Some will be deterred, others will be radicalized. The long-term impact on Hamas's cohesion and effectiveness remains uncertain, but the immediate shock was undeniable. For Iran, the transformation was equally profound. Since the 1979 Islamic Revolution, Iran has cultivated an image of regional strength, a theocratic power capable of projecting influence from Lebanon to Yemen, of supporting proxy forces across the Middle East, of standing defiant against American and Israeli pressure. The Haniyeh assassination punctured that image. It revealed that Iran's security services, for all their resources and ruthlessness, could not prevent Israeli operatives from penetrating their most sensitive facilities. It demonstrated that Tehran's guarantees of protection to allied groups like Hamas were hollow. And it underscored Israel's willingness to strike inside Iran itself, a threshold that had been crossed repeatedly in recent years, but never with such brazen visibility. Iranian officials responded with threats of retaliation, but the credibility of those threats was undermined by the fact that they had failed to prevent the assassination in the first place. Supreme Leader Khamenei vowed revenge, but his words echoed those he had spoken after previous Israeli strikes, promises that often went unfulfilled or were calibrated to avoid direct escalation. The gap between rhetoric and capability became impossible to ignore. The epilogue of the Haniyeh operation is not yet written. As of this writing, no major retaliatory strike has materialized. Hamas has vowed to continue its armed struggle. Iran has vowed to respond. Israel remains silent, neither confirming nor denying, but preparing for the possibility that its precision strike might trigger wider conflict. The operation exists now in the historical record as a data point in a larger shadow war. A war fought not with armies but with intelligence networks, not on battlefields but in hotel rooms and laboratories, not under the glare of media coverage but in the silent hours before dawn, when deniability is still possible. This is the warfare of the 21st century. Targeted, technological, and terrifying in its efficiency. It is a form of conflict where borders are suggestions, sovereignty is relative, and death arrives not from the sky but from the walls themselves. What the Haniyeh assassination ultimately reveals is a fundamental truth about power in the modern era. Walls cannot stop those who hold the keys. The most fortified compounds, the most loyal guards, the most sophisticated detection systems, all are vulnerable to patient intelligence work, to human betrayal, to the exploitation of unseen gaps. Israel has built an entire strategic doctrine around this truth, investing billions in the capabilities required to penetrate enemy defenses and strike with minimal warning. Other nations are learning this lesson. The techniques Mossad pioneered in Tehran will be studied, replicated, and adapted by intelligence agencies around the world. The genie is out of the bottle. The precedent is set. The question is no longer whether such operations are possible, but only who will be next to execute them and against whom. In the end, the story of Ismail Haniyeh's death is not merely about one man or one operation. It is about the evolution of conflict itself, from the trenches of the world wars, where enemies faced each other across defined lines, to the invisible battlefields of the Cold War, where proxy forces and covert operations replaced direct confrontation, to this new era where technology enables assassination at a distance, where sovereignty dissolves in the face of determined intelligence services, where the only certainty is that those who threaten Israel will be hunted, found, and eliminated, regardless of time, distance, or sanctuary. The jasmine-scented gardens of the Neshat compound will bloom again. The shattered windows will be replaced. The rooms will be swept and repaired and reopened to new guests. But the memory of what happened in room 412 will linger, a reminder that in the shadow war between nations and movements, between those who kill and those who hunt the killers, nowhere is safe. No one is beyond reach, and the key to every door can be turned by those patient enough to find it. This is the lesson written in blood and fire across decades of intelligence operations. This is the doctrine that turned a moonless Tehran morning into a moment of transformation. And this is the truth that will shape conflicts yet to come. Power belongs to those who can strike unseen, who can wait in silence, and who can deliver death with the precision of a surgeon's blade. The explosion that killed Haniyeh lasted 3 seconds. The message it delivered will echo for decades.